All right, welcome everyone to the September 5th, 2019 version of Venture for America 101. This is going to be a 1 hour long webinar that will cover the fundamentals and the nuts and bolts of the Venture for America Fellowship. So before I get started, I want to tell you who I am. My name is Winston Law. I was born and raised in Seattle, Washington, and for college I made my way out to Vermont to go to school where I studied geography and French. Outside of the classroom, I was really engaged in things around social impact and social entrepreneurship, which led me to be interested in joining Venture for America as a fellow after I graduated from college so that I could gain some for-profit skills on the path to becoming an entrepreneur of my own one day. And after my fellowship ended in Detroit, where I am still based, I decided to join the Venture for America team full-time in order to share with people the opportunities that you all have to become VFA fellows on the path to also becoming your own startup leaders or startup founders. So really excited to be on this call with you today. For those of you who have just joined, I'm hoping to just spend about 30 minutes talking to you all about Venture for America and what we do, and then leave it up for questions and Q&A as well. So with that, I'm going to dive into what we're going to be covering. So the first thing is going to be just the VFA mission and an overview about what we do as an organization and nonprofit. I'm going to talk about the match process, which is how fellows find a job with a startup in one of our 14 cities. I'm going to talk about training camp, which is a month-long experience where we're giving professional development experiences for all of our fellows, and it's an opportunity for fellows to build relationships and community. I'll talk then about what life is like as a VFA fellow and an alum. And then I'll talk about our resources that we have to support our fellows in starting projects and businesses at any point. And then we'll end with a Q&A. So the first thing is the mission and the overview about VFA and our application process. Now, I'm going to read out loud our mission because it's very important to what we do in terms of a nonprofit and as a fellowship program. So Venture for America is creating economic opportunity in American cities by mobilizing the next generation of entrepreneurs, that be you, and equipping them with the skills and resources that they need to create jobs. At the core of a fellowship program is this belief that a lot of young people have the opportunity to become entrepreneurs, and we want to help them be successful founders and startup leaders one day so that they can create economic opportunities, jobs, livelihoods in the cities that we're working in. So speaking of the cities we're in, we are not in New York City. We are not in San Francisco and Silicon Valley. We're in cities that we call emerging entrepreneurial ecosystems. So we're working currently in 14 cities across the country, mostly in the Northeast, the Midwest, and the Southeast. And these are cities that we think have burgeoning and growing startup ecosystems. And our goal is to help startups in those cities grow by connecting them with top talent from schools across the country. So in terms of our application process, I first want to touch on eligibility. So you're eligible to apply to Venture for America if you are a US citizen, permanent resident, or DACA recipient. And if you will have graduated with an undergraduate degree by June 2020 and no earlier than June 2017. So I just want to get that out of the way first. If you feel, let me know if you have any questions. But the first part of the application process is the activity section. So that's a chance for you to tell us a little bit more about who you are, upload your resume, and show us the impact that you made in 3 activities. And what we mean by that is we want to see your growth over time. You don't need to have started something. You don't need to be a coder. We really want to get a sense for how you've made achievements in different organizations, internships, and student jobs. The second stage, if you move forward, is an online essay where you're given a chance to write about why you want to be a VFA fellow and connecting it to the fellowship to your story, your career, and a chance for you to show us sort of a potential startup role that you would pitch to, an opportunity and a functional role that you think you can add a lot of value in with one of our company partners. We also think it's great preparation for you to communicate about yourself and articulate the ways in which you could be really great at a company. The third stage of our application process is a video interview. So that is a chance for you to speak with a VFA team member, an alum, or a fellow. And it's a chance for us to get to know you better beyond just what's written on the page. It'll give us a chance to see how you interact with challenges and how you'd overcome sort of setbacks that you might encounter as a fellow, because startups and being an entrepreneur comes with its challenges. And the fourth and final stage is an in-person all-day interview that we call Selection Day. And it'll happen in one of our 14 cities or New York City. And during selection day, you'll participate in a bunch of group activities as well as panel interview. And for the purposes of this webinar, if you apply for a next deadline on October 4th, your selection days would take place in mid to late November in Cleveland, Ohio, and Detroit, Michigan, where I live. So in terms of what we're looking for people who are mission aligned. So we're looking for people who, like one of our fellows and alums, Yulitza Jean Charles, who did her fellowship in Cincinnati in the class of 2016, someone who wants to work at a for-profit startup in one of our cities with the goal of gaining the skills that they need to be a startup leader or a startup founder one day. That is what we do as an organization. That is what our program is about. And we want to make sure that the people who apply and become fellows want to actually do that. The second thing is your ability to contribute. So this is really important in the activity section, the essay stage. We want to understand how you would be able to add value to a startup. And what we mean by that is, are you going to be able to adapt and be flexible and excel in a variety of situations as startups maybe pivot, grow, and scale? And the third thing that we look for is character. So some of the things that are really important for our community as a fellowship, as well as what we believe to be traits for a successful fellowship, are things like positivity, grit, resilience, and integrity. These are sort of the values that we think are going to be important for people to be successful. So these are the three things that we look for through our entire 4 stages of the application process. And then in terms of the match process. So this is something I get a lot of questions about. And the match process is how fellows find jobs within VFA. So you can think about the match process as a job search within a job search. So the most important thing to remember is that Venture for America is not going to just drop you into a job or drop you into a city. Really what's going to happen is you're going to be able to log on to a private online job portal and apply to different opportunities based on your interests and your skills and experiences with the companies that we've sourced in our 14 cities. And we're here to support you to do that. So last year, we had a total of 586 opportunities posted for our about 200 or so fellows. So there's always more opportunities than there are fellows. And our goal is to support you in finding and pitching yourself to opportunities that you think you'd be a good fit for. Although not every fellow is going to get their dream job, we do want to make sure that the company partner and the fellow are going to find a great fit. So the ways that we support you, I'll touch on in a little bit, but just wanted to make sure that everyone knew that over the course of our match process, which begins in the spring of every year, we started with about 280 opportunities, and we ended the match season with about 586. So we're always about trying to get opportunities for you and for company partners that would make a lot of sense for both parties. So the other thing to remember that it is pretty time intensive, as any job search is. I'm sure those of you who are looking for jobs, who might be seniors in college right now, are starting to see how much time it takes to look for a job. So in order to support you through the process, we have a few resources that are designated just for people in our program. So some of those resources include that private online job portal that I mentioned. It's only for people who are incoming fellows, so it's not something that older fellows can use. It's really an opportunity for people to make connections with companies, and then each company will continue interviewing with a fellow moving forward. And we want to make sure that we respect each company's hiring process as well. The other thing too is if you become a fellow, we will help review your resume and provide interview coaching so that you're that much more prepared to interview for startup jobs. We want to make sure that you can set up that step with your best foot forward in finding a startup job, because we know that it can be challenging. We also host VFA-only job fairs in 2 to 3 of our cities every single year. So last year we had job fairs in Cleveland, Ohio, and in Baltimore, Maryland, and Birmingham, Alabama. And that's a chance for fellows to jumpstart any conversations and practice interview skills in speed dating style interview sessions. And it's an opportunity for you to meet the other people that you're going to be doing the fellowship with, as well as fellows who are already living in the cities in our network as well. And the last thing is that in certain cases, we're able to make direct introductions. So if we know of a company, say in Kansas City, that is looking for someone who's done contact marketing for a food business, and you're that person who's done exactly that, then we can make that direct introduction for you so that you don't have to sort of cold email and go through a challenge and sort of like reach out to an opportunity that could be a really good fit for you. So our goal is to make sure that every fellow finds the best possible fit. We know that it's challenging, but as long as fellows are there, and being proactive, then we'll support them every step of the way. So in terms of the companies in Match, I know I got some questions about this upon registration. I want everyone to know that most of the company partners that we're going to be working with are for-profit companies, the vast majority of them. The rest of them are going to be either nonprofits, venture capital firms, social enterprises, or the NA represents sort of a hybrid of the both that's hard for us to categorize. So if you're someone who's interested in working for a for-profit startup, then this is definitely an opportunity where you're going to be connected with opportunities in that space, as well as companies who might be reaching out to you on the Match portal based on your skills and experiences and interests as well. There are, like, as you can see, many different opportunities that are outside of for-profits, but they're a much smaller number. And sometimes, especially for those venture capital jobs, while they are available and we make it a little bit easier for fellows to get opportunities in VCs, it can be a little bit more difficult to get those because it's just a smaller number. In terms of the industries represented, most of our for-profit companies are software and technology companies, although there's a smattering of other industries represented, like education, ed tech, health, food and beverage, as well as like general health and wellness. And as I mentioned, we had more than 500 opportunities last year available to our around 200 fellows. So now that I covered training camp, which will happen in the spring, starting in April, and most fellows are getting jobs and offers and negotiating on them in June. In July is when you would attend training camp. So training camp, like I said, is a month-long experience where you're going to be able to build skills and learn from people like IDEO, which is a huge design thinking firm in the Bay Area. Now they're around the world, but they started in the Bay Area. They helped design the shopping cart and one of Apple's first computer mouses. This year we brought in someone from Y Combinator, which is a large accelerator program out in the Bay Area, which some fellows have participated in the past as members of their startup batches, as well as experienced founders from across the country. The goal is to help you be able to add value to startups on day one. The second thing that training camp is all about is fostering an entrepreneurial mindset. So you'll be working on teams of about 5 to 6 people to revamp a website for a local business here in Detroit, potentially. We'll bring in IDEO, like I said, to help you think about solutions to a challenge like mobility, where you'll prototype a product or a service. And then we will teach you the week after about how to develop a market strategy, how to validate that business idea, so that you can pitch that and practice doing that in front of a panel of judges. So the goal of training camp is also to help ensure that you are able to be a successful entrepreneur in the future as well. And for me, the most important part about training camp is building a community and learning about VFA's core values. There are 5 core values that make up our credo. I encourage you to look those up online on our website. But for me, training camp was an opportunity to get to know the other fellows in my class before we went off to respective cities. For me, it was Detroit, and for some of my closest friends that I still talk to, that I know that I'll rely on as we grow as professionals, they went to like New Orleans or Baltimore or San Antonio. So training camp is the best way to get a lot of skills, but also build a really meaningful community with your fellow fellows. So now I want to talk about what life is like as a VFA fellow. After you do training camp in July, most fellows are going to move to their cities in August or at the very latest, early September. And for the bulk of the fellowship, it'll be working hands-on, getting on-the-ground experience with the company partner that you get a job with. The idea is that you can become a better entrepreneur by learning and working from people who've done it before. I've certainly learned a lot of things working for my startup that I wouldn't have been able to learn outside of that setting, because I'm someone who wants to see the impact of what I do every day and know that my work mattered. Because when you're number 13 at a company, every single thing that you do with customers, with your team, with projects really, really matters. So the most of your fellowship will be working day to day at your company. We'll also do some ongoing professional development and mentorship opportunities. There's only a few required events throughout the year, but you'll learn that for the most part, fellows are really hungry and want to take advantage of the resources that are available to help you grow as a professional, as a person, as an entrepreneur. So you'll have access to resources, and if things happen, if you want some coaching, we're not going to solve your problems for you, because we want to make sure that you're able to, through coaching, work through the challenges that you might be facing at work as well. And the third thing is that A lot of our fellows are really interested in diving into their cities, whether that is helping to, here in Detroit, host an event series called How to Start a Startup, which brings in and invites people from the city of Detroit to make sure that entrepreneurship can be as inclusive as possible, to others who volunteer and participate in sort of things outside of the entrepreneur world that can help contribute to the community. So some fellows are so invested that they buy homes in their cities and become active parts of different neighborhoods of the cities that they're in. So that's what life is like during VFA. Happy to answer more questions about that in the Q&A. But after Venture for America, our fellows are doing such a variety of different things. So you could be like Muhja El-Tigani, who is one of the fellows who did Y Combinator a couple of years ago. And she was a 2014 fellow who did her fellowship in Cleveland. And now she is a co-founder and CEO of a company called Natural Club, which makes natural hair care products for women. I encourage you to look them up because they're doing really cool stuff. They've hired a lot of fellows. And today, about 13% of alums in VFA are working full-time in their own companies. And about 30% of fellows at some point have started something through VFA. So the number's pretty high. We want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to become a successful entrepreneur. But we also know that it's a long game and that fellows will stumble, they will maybe fail once or twice. So we're here to support people on that journey. A lot of our fellows also continue to work at startups. So 60% of our alums still work at some startup, whether that's an early stage, mid stage, or late stage company. Alex Persky-Stern is a 2013 Detroit fellow who started at his company in 2013. And today, in 2019, he's COO and has hired a couple fellows to work with him. So you could be someone like Persky who continues to work at a startup for beyond the 2 years. Because you're a salaried employee of the company, when you graduate from VFA, you can still stay on at that company, which is what Alex did. And the other bucket that I want to mention is that about 14% of our alums take their skills to work at a larger tech company like Amazon, Facebook, or Google. Molly Adair, who did her fellowship in Providence in 2014, is now a UX designer at Amazon Web Services. So she took the skills that she learned as a designer at an office furniture company to bring it into the tech world. So these are the things that you can do. There are fellows who go off to go to grad schools, programs, and in particular MBA programs. There's others who work in venture capital or work in accelerator programs. So a lot of fellows are still very much engaged in the startup ecosystem. The last thing I want to touch on before we dive into the Q&A is our resources to help you launch things. So what I really love about Venture for America is that, yes, there's a community. Yes, we help you grow as an entrepreneur and as a startup leader, but we also are going to give you all the resources that you can need to be successful as an entrepreneur. So the first thing that I want to mention is that we do these quarterly virtual hackathons where you will be working in teams of other fellows, maybe in your city, maybe if you're a fellow in Pittsburgh, you might be working on a project with someone who lives in Cleveland, for example, and you have an idea that you want to validate. So you go out into the world, you spend 2 weeks validating this business idea, and at the end of those 2 weeks, you'll pitch it to a virtual panel. And if your project and idea wins, then we will give fellows a couple $1,000s just to keep the momentum going, because we want to encourage fellows to have businesses, and we want them to be able to be successful in those endeavors. The other thing that we do is a VFA exclusive accelerator program that's just for our alums. So at the end of the second year of your fellowship, if you have a business that you're mostly ready to take full time, you can apply to our accelerator program. And in our accelerator program, which is actually happening right now as we speak in Cleveland, Ohio, you're given a place to live for 4 months for free in that city. So in this case, it's Cleveland. And then we're also giving you a 4-month living stipend, as well as time, space, access to mentors, resources, so that you can really work on getting your company off the ground so you can go full-time on it. A lot of our fellows who've done our accelerator program have gone off to become very successful, either like having a company that has hired a bunch of people in Philadelphia called Leagueside, which helps with youth sports sponsorship across the country, to actually 2 companies from our 2017 cohort in the accelerator program who've gone off to do Techstars and then raise a lot of money afterwards to continue growing their company. So it's something that you would have access to as an alum of the fellowship. And then the last thing is that based on the size of your company, we're able to make financial investments and grants in your company. as well as helping you at the earlier stages do a crowdfunding campaign to make sure you get some traction and test out your idea in the real world. So those are some of the opportunities that we have for people who are, whenever they're ready to. There are fellows who in the class of 2013 who use these resources to start their own companies. So with that, I wanted to end sort of the information part of it in terms of Venture for America and what we do as a fellow entrepreneur and what we do as a nonprofit, and wanted to launch into some Q&A. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can have some FaceTime with people. And I want to make sure that I have some time to speak with you all. So feel free to put some items in the chat box. You can DM me directly if you're not as interested in having a question be as public. But feel free to let me know if you have questions, because I want to make sure that this is useful for all of you. And if you want to, you can go ahead and unmute yourself, turn on your video, and ask the question as well. Already I'm seeing a question in the chat box, and it is, would you say that the small amount of VC participants is more so a factor of candidate self-selection, or simply that it's harder to place people in VC? I would say, so part of my job also is to support our fellows in getting jobs every spring during the match process. And I would say that, the first part of it is that in general, not even in VFA, there's just fewer VCs out there. And two, venture capital firms require a level of financial acumen and experience in the startup world often in order to succeed in that type of role. So there are certainly fellows who have opportunities in VCs who work in Detroit or who work in St. Louis or who are in a variety of different cities, but it is just a little bit hard to connect people with opportunities in VC. Although I would say also a lot of fellows want to do VFA because they're interested in working for a startup that's on the ground rather than being on the other side of things in terms of like venture capital and having the money in the first place. Hopefully that answers the question. So another question is, do we need to know what type of startup we would potentially like to have post VFA now? No, not at all. So we don't require you to have a company to apply to VFA. In fact, I'm a fellow and I didn't apply with something. I don't have an idea myself. I'm more interested in identifying problems I can fix. And yes, I've worked on projects with other fellows over the course of my time as fellow and as an alum, but by no means do we require people when they're applying or even when they are a fellow to have an idea of something they want to start. We do want people to want to start something because that's why we exist, and I want to make sure that you'd be excited to do that as well, but you don't need to have an idea about what kind of startup you want to have. Part of training camp is to help you feel really excited about identifying problems and giving you the toolkit and the mindsets to move about the world to identify things that you think could be problems that a business could solve one day. So not at all. So another question is, how does VFA identify quote unquote emerging cities? Like what qualities does Cleveland have to be classified as one of those? That's a really good question. So they are typically cities that have a harder time attracting and retaining talent. And for that, I mean, I've talked to startup founders here in Detroit who are excited about the talent here in the metro area in Southeast Michigan, but they want to have access to more people who would be able to like add value to their companies. We know that there's such tremendous talent in our cities. We want to make it more accessible to our company partners to find people who would be excited to work and add value. And cities that have emerging ecosystems. So they're not maybe as robust as a startup scene in maybe like a Seattle, where I'm from, or like San Francisco or New York, but cities that we think are like have thriving and growing startup ecosystems as well. So those are how we classify those. And if you have more questions, feel free to let me know as well. The city impact piece is a huge part of why we exist as well. We want to make sure that we can help grow economies and want to make sure I can answer those questions if those come through as well. All right, yeah, feel free to add some more questions. I did get some questions during the registration part of this and want to make sure that I answer those. So one of those questions was, are there specific industries that Venture for America focuses on? As for the companies that we work with, as you saw, like most of them are going to be software technology companies. Just because it's a lot easier, quite frankly, if you have code and someone who can write it, to start a company and create a service or a product. much more challenging to create a whole supply chain if you're starting a food company or a clothing company. So just for the structural reasons, there's going to be much more software and technology companies that are out there. In terms of the companies that fellows start, they really, really vary. So a lot of people do start tech companies. One of the fellow founders within VFA is a fellow named Brian Rudolph, who was the Detroit 2012 fellow, and he started a company called Bonza. And Bonza is a company that makes chickpea pasta, and you can find it in locations and in like Kroger's and Whole Foods across the country. And then I have another question is, let's see, I have a question that I'll answer directly to the person that I got, but another question was, what are some interesting and popular ways that Venture for America can be utilized? How do you grow a professional network as a startup founder and translate them into growth opportunities? Yeah, so a huge part of the reason why I think the VFA fellowship is so valuable is that you get to be connected with a lot of people who are high character, high integrity people who are excited about building things bigger than just sort of like, I want to be my own boss, or like, I want to get rich one day. Like, people join VFA because they really want to be able to build something that's bigger than themselves, which is lofty, but I think that it reflects one of our core values, which is I will create opportunities for myself and others. And it's something that I really resonate with, because I personally see entrepreneurship as a way to not only solve problems, but also create opportunities for people to like have a paycheck and a job and have professional growth. So definitely the network provides opportunities for networking within the entrepreneurial world within VFA, and then be able to launch that career in the startup space to get your foot in the door and to make sure that, you know, if you're coming to this world or you're already in this world, that we can accelerate your success. All right, what are the costs and fees related to the application process? What about travel, costly interviews? That's a great question. So we do our best to meet the needs of the people who apply to Venture for America. The only sort of cost associated with our application process is potential travel to selection day. So depending on sort of where you live, you know, you're going to have to pay for either a car or a plane. And if you are invited to selection day, you're going to be given an opportunity to request financial aid based on need. We do our best to meet 100% of need, but as a nonprofit, we do have to allocate our resources effectively. And we ask that people who do ask for additional money are giving an explanation for us as well. So if you do get invited to selection day, please do ask those questions and make those requests as well. We want to make sure that you're able to go to selection day to interview. The other things that you, as a fellow, may have to pay for is potential travel to one of our job fairs. We do provide a stipend, and again, we are able to provide additional money based on need and where people are coming from in terms of like cities to our job fairs. And then for training camp as well, we also are able to provide need for travel. But everything else is basically an investment in you as a person and as a professional person and sort of a future startup leader or founder as well. So another question is, do the tech companies only hire those already in tech? As a startup, do they have other departments? No, so you don't have to be a coder. So most of the opportunities that fellows are getting are going to be in operations, project management, account management, or like customer success, and then sales and business development. So as a startup, I would say you're not going to be successful if you just have like software. You're going to need people who are going to be able to operate, execute, and make sure customers are happy. So I didn't have tech experience at all before joining VFA. As a fellow, I taught myself how to do design skills and user experience and user interface design. So I definitely have those skills, but by no means am I a coder. And like, I would say that there are fellows who are coders, but not everyone is someone who's a software engineer. And that there are plenty of opportunities for people who don't have those computer science skills. I hope that answered your question. Another question is, in terms of hard skills, what skills besides coding would be useful for the program? Like I said, in terms of my answer to the previous question is, startups are going to need a wide variety of skills. And what we're really looking for is how you've made an impact in the past and how you might translate that into something in the future. So in the college context, if you're a leader of a student organization that runs a yearly event, demonstrating to us what you did to help grow that event and make that a better experience for people will allow us to understand sort of operations and project management skills. That said, if you want to learn some coding skills, that's always going to be a value add for companies and something that you can really build on. So there are a lot of skills that are going to be useful for startups. For the application process, I would encourage you to focus on the skills that you think have really mattered to jobs, internships, and student organizations that you've been a part of, or projects that you've completed, or startups that you've already started. Another question, do any of the companies offer rotational roles for fellows to explore different departments, skills, or jobs? That's also a really great question. And I would say that most of the companies aren't going to provide traditional and structured rotational programs as larger firms would. And a lot of that is because companies that are small don't necessarily have all the resources that a major firm would for like structured professional development. That's sort of one of the trade-offs that I'll be real about. But what I will say is that if you are working in a small company like I did, like I was doing so many different roles all at once, and I wanted to have a lot of responsibility and trying a lot of things as a young professional, like my first job out of college. So I was intentional about applying to companies during the match process that would allow me to grow as a professional. So I started off as an account manager, but I was helping also to grow and make our operations and processes easier, and also taught myself design skills when we sort of had a transition on our team. I advocated for myself to say like, hey, like I've taught myself these things, give me a chance. I want to be able to add value to the company in this way. So there are definitely opportunities to grow and get different skills, but they might not be, a traditional sort of role rotational program. I'm seeing that there's currently a time limit for our Zoom meeting. So we're gonna unfortunately have to get off the call in about 3 minutes. So does anyone have any last minute questions at all? I want to make sure that I'm answering anything before we head off. And I'm also gonna put my email address in the chat box. So feel free to send me an email or anything that you might need. I'm here to be a resource for all of you, and I want to make sure that you have what you need to be successful. So please don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have any questions about BFA or application process or anything like that. Anyone have one last question? I apologize for having to cut this short a little bit. That was not my intention, but want to make sure that I can be helpful. Are there other application deadlines besides the October one you mentioned? Yeah, so feel free to go to our website as well to check out more information about our deadline. But we'll have 2 more deadlines after our October 4th one. We'll have one on November 21st, so a week before Thanksgiving. And then our final deadline is January 31st. So I understand that people are exploring things and trying to figure things out, and I respect that and hope that this has been a good resource for you. So feel free to apply to the one that's going to be the best fit for you. It does take us, on average, about 2 months to go through the entire process, from the moment that the deadline ends to the selection day and when you would hear from us. So just keep that in mind as well. There's a chart on our website where you can see all that information. And is there a GPA cutoff? No, there is not a GPA cutoff. It is one of the many factors that we consider, but it's not one of the things that would preclude you from applying. So thank you all so much for joining on this webinar. I'm really excited to have a lot of people join. Feel free again to let me know if you have any questions, and I hope that I can see your applications before our October 4th deadline. So thank you all so much. This has been really great, and I'll follow up with you if you have sort of individual and private questions as well. So thank you all so much. I hope you have a great rest of your evening.